What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Wisdom Walkers podcast, where I am your host, Javante Blackman. Just reminding everybody that this is a promo hub for my latest book, Walking with Wisdom. And it's just a place where we come and we talk about all things wisdom and how it can be the principle that leads us to the glorious destiny that God has for us. And today I have some great guests in the building with me right now. And they are going to be sharing probably some of the information that I would consider to be the best that any of us could receive. We're talking today about how we can be wise and frustrated. And I got my man Jay Terry and A. Howard in the building. And I'm happy that they said yes to this episode. And so just say what's up, guys. Let the people know that you're in the building.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you for extending the invite.
Not a problem at all. So I love to break in every episode with the icebreaker question, letting all my guests feel a little bit more comfortable in the show. So tell me the weirdest fear or the silliest fear you've ever had in your life. The silliest thing, like I shouldn't have been afraid of that, but I was afraid of it.
Well, I would say probably for me, I think the silliest fear I've ever had was to perform well and be good at something and be famous for it. Sometimes you have that fear of being in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous when you talk about performance. You know, you deal with different sports and you're performing for people. That's what it requires. It requires you to be famous and to grow into that success that way. And sometimes you think you're okay for it until it actually comes your way and you're like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't know I would get fame for this. I want fortune, but I don't want fame.
Right.
You know? And it's a silly thing because fame doesn't always have to be a negative thing, you know, but sometimes we receive it that way or it looks that way. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a silly fear that I have had, so to speak.
Yeah. How about you?
I would say public speaking.
Really?
Yeah.
You were afraid of?
I was afraid of public speaking. Mm-hmm. As far as being around family and one-on-one, I had no issues with that. But early on, I was terrified to do public speaking. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even so, that when I went to do ministry, mm-hmm. I would have that sort of hesitation that most of it was doing public speaking. Shocking, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing what I know about you, very, very shocking. But let me see. My weirdest or silliest fear would probably be traveling. And I love to travel.
Interesting.
But growing up, like especially when I was in college, I would fear all kinds of silly things about traveling. What if I get kidnapped?
You have real fear.
What if I don't get to where I'm supposed to be? What if I get lost? What if they change the day of the event and I book it at the wrong time? All these crazy weird things, right? So those were my fears. So as I told you guys earlier on this episode, we're talking about the frustration that comes with being in your 20s. And I know most of my listeners, if not all of my listeners, are either in their 20s or right outside of it or right before. And I just want to let you guys know that it is completely normal to be wise, meaning you understand what wisdom is. You have a sense of wisdom. You have a sense of how important this principle is in your life, but you also are frustrated with what's going on. You don't have all the answers. And as I told you guys in the book, God does not make answer keys. He doesn't give us every single answer. He makes textbooks, and we have to read those textbooks. And we are fortunate enough on this episode to have some great gentlemen in the building who are living textbooks, right? And so I have a couple questions for you guys, and I'm going to start off with this question. It's a question I ask all my guests. What does wisdom mean to you, and who's the first person that comes to mind when you think about it?
What does wisdom mean to me? I would like to say wisdom is basically just information from pain. Information from pain.
That's a good one.
And the first person that comes to my mind is my mother. It's my mom.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. What about you, Lee?
I would say that wisdom to me means understanding you do not know everything. and accepting that.
Yeah.
The best examples that you have through life come from when you do not know something, you learn and learn a lesson from it. And I think sometimes people assume they know more than they do, and you approach life that way, and that's when you kind of get humbled by what you don't know.
100%.
So I think the wise person is the person who understands that I'm coming to this situation as a student and try to pull something from it.
Yeah.
And I think it's ironically the same person that I reminded of as my mother, because she was a teacher for 30 years.
Wow.
And she made sure she recognized that I did not know everything. That's one thing a teacher's going to let you know is that you do not know everything. So I think of her when I think of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. What's crazy is in the book, I discuss how when we think about wisdom, we should personify that principle and look at her as a woman. And the woman that I think about is my mother. And I think that when we personify wisdom, we're able to build a relationship with the principle and do life with it in a way that makes it real and tangible and not just this mythical or theological principle that we really can't really connect with. So I think that's dope. All right. So next question. Do you think it's possible to have a relationship with wisdom and still be frustrated? I'll let whoever want to go first.
Absolutely. I do feel you can be wise and frustrated. And I think the notion of the fact that, that you are wise is a direct correlation to the fact that you are frustrated. Because wise people are aware that there's more information.
Correct.
And when you're aware that there's more information and you don't feel like you possess the knowledge or the foresight, it leaves you frustrated. Especially when you can look out with different results, whatever arena that may be,
right? And
you see results, but you don't know the bullet points of how to get there.
Yeah.
And so that gap between having information and seeing something is sort of like the frustrated part, because you're seeking information and wisdom to help you kind of make these steps to get to a certain place. So the fact that people are frustrated is not so much a bad thing. I know frustration sounds like it can be such a negative thing, but the fact that you're wise doesn't negate you from being frustrated. Not at all. As a matter of fact, they're two separate things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good point, Jay. I do understand that correlation in the sense that almost like the more wise you are, the more frustrated you might be, because you now recognize either the things or resources you do not have, or the things you cannot apply because you don't have the time and space and energy, the things you cannot affect, the change you cannot affect. Those things kind of run hand in hand sometimes. Also, sometimes it's good to not be wise about a certain thing, like that ignorant bliss you have. So you'll go into an endeavor not knowing what you're missing out on, what you're doing wrong, and that can actually propel you into a further success in that field. So let's use basketball as an example. I'm a basketball guy, so I'm gonna use the basketball reference. But sometimes you can go on the court and a coach and say, "This guy doesn't know his limits."
Right.
You're right. I don't. I'm not wise enough to know, so I'm gonna go try anyway. And sometimes you might end up being successful in that because you have the wherewithal, not the wherewithal, you have the audacity to kind of go and try it anyway, even though you don't recognize you might not succeed in that. So it can be a good thing sometimes to kind of be ignorant and blissful at the same time.
I think that's a great segue to your other question that is further down.
Absolutely. On your journey, where did you find the most wisdom when you were frustrated?
On your journey,
on your specific journey, not just anybody or generally speaking, but for you, where did you find the wisdom when you were frustrated? Like, that I guess, okay, I'm in this place, maybe I need to be a little bit more ignorant, or maybe I need to be, something of that effect.
So for me personally, my most frustrated phase that I remember was my mid-20s. Mm-hmm. So after I finished undergrad, I had these big dreams, but and I was frustrated because I had these dreams, but I didn't recognize at the time that I was trying to take a shortcut. And so I didn't want to spend years of my life, dedicate years of my life after undergrad to pursue graduate school. And because I just didn't feel like I wanted to put in that time. I felt like I was getting older. There are other things that I wanted to do with my life. And I just wanted my life to start. Yeah. So because from up to that point, I was just a student. Now, when I was frustrated, I had went to ministry school during that time, and I was at a great church, and I literally used all of the sermons and all of the Bible study that I was going through at that time. And my pastor, who I didn't know personally from afar, literally was teaching me about manhood and about kind of just helping me, empowering me in a sense to kind of get through those difficult frustrations that I was feeling at the time. Absolutely. So this wasn't someone that I ever knew. This wasn't someone that I ever talked to. This wasn't even someone that would ever even know the impact that they had on my life during that period. So it goes to show you that you don't have to have a particular person. You can use something or someone's wisdom to kind of help you to get to that next step or get you through those dark moments.
Absolutely. 100%. In the book, I talk about how when we think about our wise counsel, each and every one of us sits with a cup waiting for wisdom to be poured into. And sometimes we know the people who are pouring into our cup, and sometimes we are not connected to them as much as we would like to be connected to somebody else. But it does not stop their wisdom from pouring into our cup. And if we're ever open-minded enough, we will be able to receive what it is that they have. And in any season and place, in the most appropriate season, that wisdom can come back and it can help us. So I'm just sending the same question to you, A. Where in your life would you say that you were in need of wisdom to help you navigate the frustrations?
Interesting. I think that, just a little bit of history by myself. As a former athlete, I felt frustrated for the majority of my my athletic career. Because you have these high expectations, you have these things you want to do. But throughout that time, I don't even think Jay understands this, but as you go through your career, you end up at certain points and you figure out, okay, what was I supposed to do with my career? And even as recent as this weekend, I fly down to Florida to watch a basketball game and come to this wonderful facility. And to me, that's like a eureka moment. Wow, this is actually amazing. I said to my friend, and he said, "That's what you're doing today?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "That's amazing. That's a dream job to be able to travel and watch a kid play basketball. Like I can't even." And that to me, you're frustrated throughout your process, but the end game is like, well, what were you going to do after that anyway? And to me, it's like a lot of my wisdom comes from the fact that it wasn't really about basketball. It was more about your character and being able to build relationships with people that trust you with their children. That's a huge responsibility that somebody gives you when they trust you with your children. And I feel like that came full circle because, like I said before, my mother's a teacher, and she always said to me, like, this is the actual fruit of all your trouble. Being able to gain someone's trust with their children is a huge thing. So I feel wise in that sense that that someone would say, "Hey, look after my kid. I trust you with my kid." So throughout that frustration, I'm like, well, that was actually came full circle, in terms of what I was able to achieve. That's like a high level of success to me.
I like that. So just to kind of make sure that I'm getting this right, because I promise y'all, I'm taking notes on this episode, probably more than I'll do any talking. But would you say that wisdom met you at the end as you went through the journey, like towards it was hindsight that wisdom?
Yes, at the end.
At the end, as opposed to in the middle.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there was no, for me personally, there wasn't any sort of picture that hit me in the face and be like, I'm being wise, along this. It was, as I've gotten older or getting older, I take a synopsis of my past and apply what I've learned now and kind of give an assessment, and I can look back. And so what I have now, I look back and I can use what I've learned and say, ooh, look at what I did here, or look how I turned left or right. And I can say, I know I turned left or right, and this is what I learned from it. And then, but it also helps me to know when those sort of cycles, because life actually starts to repeat itself in cycles. And so when some of those, even though it comes in different forms, when those things show up, I try to make sure I don't miss that lesson again. How to apply wisdom. Because I didn't know how to apply wisdom when I was 19 or 20. But in my 40s, I've learned enough. But the only reason that I feel like I've gained some sort of level of wisdom is because of all the things that I've done in my teens and 20s and 30s, that I've gone back and did the homework and said, look what decision I made here, whether it turned out positive or negative, and I extrapolate from that what I learned. So I'll give you a good example of something that I learned. When I was 24 years old, I was working at the time. I had finished undergrad. I was in that in-between space before I started graduate school. So I was working full-time. My wife was in graduate school. And I decided I wanted to buy us a new car, okay? So I went down to the credit union at the university that we were going to, and then they had this program where it was like a lease program, but it's like a lease program, but specifically at the end of the lease, they had this balloon payment. So you can either pay the balloon or you could buy the car.
Right.
Okay, so obviously the payments on a lease is a little bit more attractive than purchasing. I wasn't concerned about the miles per year. I go to this dealership without doing any in-depth research because I was buying that car out of impulse. Okay, I just wanted to show my young wife that I can buy her a new car. Okay, so the reasoning why I was going to get it was out of, I'm trying to show her. Okay, so when you have an intention to do something out of impulse, you don't do research. You don't consider different avenues. So I go down and I go sign a contract at the dealership for the car. This is in 2004. When I signed the contract at the dealership, it was a contract that says if the financing doesn't work out at the credit union, we at least have a contract that we will finance the car through our credit union. Your credit score is good enough. We pretty much got you pre-qualified in case that doesn't work. Right. I said, oh, no big deal, sir. I signed the contract. Instead of going back to the credit union to make sure everything was okay, out of impulse, oh no, I want the new car, brand new car. I drive the car up the parking lot. I've signed the contract. They're good. I go to the credit union and then the financing doesn't work out. Okay. So the people tell me at the credit union, the payments was much higher. Okay. So I'm like, oh, no, I can't handle that. So I hurry up and I go back to the dealership. I said, I'm not going to take the car because things didn't work out. And the guy tells me, no, young man, you signed the contract. I said, but you don't understand. I can't afford the car. He says, that's not my business. You signed the contract. So I left the dealership The man called me for a whole week and he says, young man, you gotta come pick up your car. They parked the car in front of the dealership. Every time I drove up and down the street, the brand new car is sitting there. Now I'm stressed because I'm realizing that I have made this huge mistake and I have to take on the responsibility that I couldn't afford.
Right.
And I'm a husband and my wife is in graduate school. I eventually had to get that car, and from 24 to almost 20 through to 28, I had to suffer paying those payments. Okay, so I was 24 to 28, and I learned that lesson. Now in my 40s, think about this. This is 20 years ago. Now when I do a real estate deal, or I do a contract for my job, or I do anything, I never do it under impulse, no matter how good it looked. I never. So even as simple as my son's contract for his school, a man taught me, you always wait 48 hours. If you feel good about it in 48 hours, it's good to go. If you don't, or if something comes up, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Because in those 48 hours, I go through all the different aspects of, is this the right decision? Can I afford it? Is it the right timing? There are so many different things, and it prevents me from doing anything out of impulse. Now, how did I learn that? Because for 4 years, from 24 to 28, I had to pay for a car that I couldn't afford.
You suffer from a decision making impulse.
Yeah.
48 hours. I'm gonna steal that. I need 48 hours.
And I still do it. I still do it to this day. And some people in certain things will say, well, hey, I need you to do, as soon as it's okay.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, it's okay.
Right.
Because I'm not going to spend another 4 years doing anything out of it.
Oh, I like that.
100%.
Let me borrow $50. Wait 48 hours. I'll get back to you.
48 hours. All right, let's get to the next question, because I feel like you're leading into this next question. Does knowing better always mean doing better?
No. Knowing better does not mean doing better.
So, and I asked that question because a lot of us, especially in our 20s, we've had so many experiences and decisions that we've made out of youth, right? Being young and dumb. And some of us have real life consequences, and some of us have scars. And in the last episode, you guys know that I talked about scars that we get just from our life experiences, right? Some of them we see and some of them we don't, but nonetheless, they're all still there. So in my 20s, the thing that I'm learning the most about is I can know better, but sometimes I don't always do better. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it's sometimes that I choose to do the not so smart thing out of the excuse of, I'm young, I'm 27, I can afford to make this mistake now.
Yeah.
Not even considering what the ramifications are later. So I'm gonna leave that open to you guys. Is knowing better always doing better?
But I have to ask you, are you making those decisions knowing that it's not something good for you?
Sometimes. I'm be honest, sometimes.
Right.
if I can be completely honest.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Please.
If I can be completely honest with you. Sometimes I make decisions that I know are not good for me. Not because I don't fear the ramifications of them.
Okay.
But sometimes I can't see the ramifications. So it's almost like fearing something I don't know exists. So I'm gonna give you an example.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
But that's so there's a gap there between somebody doing something ignorantly and somebody doing something intentionally just
to be doing something.
But them knowing the consequences. Because when you're doing something ignorantly, you don't know that there are consequences.
Right.
So what I'm asking you in a sense is, you're saying at this point in your life, there are moments you do something knowing there are consequences, not just doing something ignorantly because you have no information.
Correct.
Okay. Which one is it?
It's doing things that I know that there are consequences, as opposed to just doing something that I don't know the consequences
Okay.
of. So what I'm saying is, and this is a common thing that I'm finding, not just for myself, but other people in their 20s. We do things just to do it. Really not saying, counting the cost, really not saying that we know, but knowing better. I'm glad we do know better.
Absolutely.
But we don't always do better. And you guys have lived through your 20s. Have you ever had similar experiences to where, like, hey, there is better, but not necessarily doing better. And sometimes that doesn't have to mean making a bad decision versus a good decision. Sometimes it doesn't mean making an impulsive decision versus a patient decision. Sometimes it's just, I know that there's better for me, but I'm just gonna do what's available. I
would say it's to kind of use the analogy. I'm not sure. Forgive me if I mess this up, but you know how you get a paycheck and they say you're supposed to put a certain amount aside for savings, a certain amount aside for your fixed income, a certain amount aside for your expenditures, miscellaneous.
Right.
I think decision making is the same way. You give yourself some space to make some bad decisions, and you know that's your expendable. You got some things you're gonna put aside as your savings. This is, you got some things you're gonna put aside for your retirement and your future. But sometimes you're gonna make some decisions. Now, to put it in a minute form, let's say you go out to eat. We go out to eat. We go eat some fried food. I know for sure this fried food is not good for me in terms of my health.
Right.
But I'm putting it aside because I know the rest of the week I had salad or I had a healthy, organic meal, so to speak, or a shake. So I'm not going to always beat myself up about some of the decisions I make, because I know I put aside the right ones to help myself in the future. This one may not be as bad, but I'm not going to beat myself up for the ones that, like you said, I consciously know this may not be the best decision for me.
100%.
So I give a small example. Let's say you have work in the morning and you have but sometimes you want to watch the game, and I'm just going to watch the game tonight or whatever. I'm going to stay up and watch a movie. It's not the most militant and disciplined thing to do sometimes, but you got to balance it out because you can't always have it always be right.
100%.
Give yourself some space to mess up and feel some grace and feel comfortable with that.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is that wisdom lives in this hometown of grace. That's where she resides. And that sometimes the wisest thing that you can do is give yourself grace. Give your situation grace, as opposed to trying to get it right every single time.
Right.
Giving yourself grace allows wisdom to have the work space to do what it is that she does, or have just the piece that, hey, now I can teach you the lesson that you can apply to later.
Yeah.
But if you don't give yourself grace and every decision is either 100% right or 100% wrong, there is no room for growth. There is no room for wisdom to do what it is that she does and live live within you.
Yes. Yes.
So that for me is just a nugget that we share. We all share. All right.
Absolutely.
Next question. Now this is the one I've been waiting for the answer for. Is having company during the frustrating seasons, family, friends, significant others, is that a wise thing to do, or should we opt for isolation and solitude during those seasons?
So the first thing is you have to know where you are. So you have to know where you are mentally and emotionally. It depends on where you are and what you're feeling. So if you're in a season where you cannot receive information, where you cannot handle criticism, whether it is, or information, whether it is positive or negative. If you're in that place, it lets you know that you're in a place for isolation. All right. So, if you're in a space where you're looking for information or opinions or information, or somebody's insight, then family, whomever, family, friends, or whomever who provides a safe place for you to express how you feel, and those people are going to be honest, those people are going to be empowering, that is where you should run immediately.
Gotcha.
But if just because somebody's a friend or family, if you know that those people or persons are critical or negative, regardless of what title they hold,
right,
you have to keep most of what you're going through sacred, because you're frustrated.
Correct.
Because this will be more of a negative impact on you and lead to more frustration than it would to any benefit or good for you. So it depends on where you are. And when you're frustrated in a frustrated season, it shifts. Sometimes it shifts. So you're in a frustrated season where you're open to information. And then there's other times you're frustrated and no matter what anybody says, you're not listening to them because you're either in a dark hole or you just need some silence to try and figure things out.
Right.
So what I have always gauged is when I'm asking someone something, I pay attention to how I'm feeling inside. Because I've been in situations where I've said something to someone about something I'm going through and they try to tell me something positive and I recognize immediately in myself that I'm like, okay. Now they don't know that I'm feeling like that and I could be looking at them or I could be listening to them on the phone, but I know internally, if I be honest, I'm internally going, okay. And so I pay attention to that. And then I have to do an assessment and say, well, why are you telling them? And so I could be in a space where I don't really need you to give me any insight. I just need you to listen to me. And so when you're in that space, you got to be careful because you can hold people to something they can't really do for you, even though you are sharing it with them.
Right.
And so what happens is in those moments, I try to be careful giving advice in those moments because even though a person is coming to you, you're the exact same person they'll be upset with.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it goes hand in hand. So when you're in a frustrated place, and I've done this to other people and I've had people do it to me.
Right.
But for me personally, when I was younger, I didn't ask anybody for much advice anyway. But now as I get older, there's situations that I'm like business stuff that I'm dealing with right now where I'm frustrated and I'm not sharing it with anyone because I already know I'm not in a space that I want to hear somebody's opinion about it because this is an intense situation.
Correct.
Right? That's very, very good point. I think one of the gems to take away from that is you're lucky. You're lucky to have people around you who have the emotional intelligence to know when and how to respond to the actions that you're going through. So, for example, if you're going through trauma, you're going through frustration, you're going through different trials and tribulations in your life, sometimes the person that's closest to you can just provide, like you said, an ear, a kind word, space, let you go through it, or interject and say, hey, I think you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Correct.
And that part is the gem because there's not a lot of times where you recognize who that person is. That person may not be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be a colleague or whoever. So finding that person, understanding that's who they are and they have the emotional intelligence to understand what you need at that time, that's the gem. That's the person that you hold on to that person. And you understand I can be next to them in the same room. They know not to speak right now because I'm frustrated. You know, so for example, when you come from a basketball game, I know you turned the ball over, I know you're frustrated, but I'm gonna be quiet for now because I'm gonna let you process it, you know, and I'll wait for you to ask me what you think you did wrong for the game, you know. And sometimes when I'm dealing with kids and I'm coaching them, I'll let them just get it out. I'll leave you alone about it. I won't go too far.
The thing that as a 27-year-old I've struggled with is knowing what I need when I'm frustrated. And telling people what I need. So, prime example, with everybody, those of you who've been listening to the podcast, you guys know that almost 3 years ago, I lost my mom. And at the time, I was in a relationship with an individual who I wanted so bad for her to just listen. I didn't need advice. I didn't need answers. I just needed a safe space to get all of it off my chest. And it was so hard for me as a man to say, hey, this is what I just need you to listen to me. Not only because just personally I'm not comfortable with sharing with people what I need, especially at that time. I'm learning how to do it now with help with therapy and just living life a little bit more, but I wasn't comfortable sharing what I needed with that specific individual because you know, you with your girl, you gonna be Superman. I don't need nothing, baby. I'm good. I'm here for you, right? But it was so hard for me to say, hey, I'm frustrated, but I just need you to listen. I just need you to listen. And I think that a lot of times we gain that wisdom as we get older. Yeah. Now, moving forward, I'm able to say, hey, when I'm frustrated, this is what I need. When I'm going through something I really don't understand, not necessarily saying that I'm frustrated with that, I'm just, you know, putting the pieces together, I'm moving the chess pieces around. I just need you to listen. Yeah. From my friends, I may need advice. From my mentors, I need advice. But from certain individuals, I need you to listen. And I think, as you said earlier, it's about identifying people who have the emotional intelligence to handle what it is that you need. And sometimes you may not even have a relationship with that person, which is why I'm telling you guys, I am a huge advocate for therapy. I know it's taboo in our community. Black people think you crazy if you got a therapist. I'm not sitting down on nobody's couch to talk. But I'm telling you guys, the best decision I've made within the last 3 years is signing up for therapy. My first therapist wasn't the best person or fit for me because he didn't know how to meet that need. But now I have a therapist who does, and I am 100% grateful for that individual because he helps me with what I need.
That's wonderful.
So yeah.
Let me just say one thing about that. The irony in all this conversation is that I recognize I'm not always that person because there's situations where my wife has went through things, whether it be, you know, frustrated with the job or whatever, and I'll try to fix the problem for her versus just shutting up and just saying, I hear you. Sometimes she doesn't want me to respond and fix it. I'll call them, I'll fix it. No, just quiet.
And you know what's crazy? I was just telling this to somebody today. I had to learn how to forgive that person. Yeah. Because I was so upset that they couldn't be what I needed. That I didn't even consider the fact that it didn't have to be them
for that space.
It didn't have to be them.
And that's what was going through my head when you were talking.
It didn't have to be them. And it was so frustrating to me because at the time, because it's like, man, I really want this person to just get it. Why can't they get it? Why can't? And it didn't have to be them.
Because you picked them.
Because I picked them. I picked them. But it didn't have to be them. And so if this person is ever listening to this episode, I'm sorry. Like for real, I am sorry for trying to put something on you that didn't necessarily have to be your job. It's not your job. And if you were ever to sign up for it, fine, cool. I appreciate whatever help you can give. But I'm sorry I wasn't man enough to tell you what I needed. I'm sorry that I tried to put a responsibility on you that was not your job. And I really pray that you forgive me because I made that mistake.
Well, we often do. I have people that I pick for certain things in my life, and it frustrates me all the time. And my wife have said to me, "When are you going to learn?" Because I have picked certain people, which I don't have a lot of them, but I have picked certain people that when I have something personal that I am experiencing, that's the person I would call for this, that's the person I would call for that.
Correct.
And when they don't respond how I want them to respond, which is never, okay? Which is never. I am left feeling like I'm battling always alone. And or I don't have a safe outlet. So I'll say, for instance, I have a male friend that we've been friends for over 20 years. I recognize that what we shared in our 20s, that relationship has evolved. And as much as I know that relationship has evolved, I constantly am tempted to try and force certain conversations and situations to pull that from that person, that we're still cool, but we're not on that space. We're not in that space anymore. So we often do that, you know, when relationships evolve.
Yeah.
Or when people don't have that capacity.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that capacity.
100%.
When you don't have that capacity.
The hardest thing in my 20s that I'm learning, especially in the relationship area, whether it be friendships, romantic, what have you, is learning what you have the capacity for and understanding what other people have the capacity for. And not feeling slighted when that person doesn't have the capacity, or just speaking from personal experience, when it comes to me not having the capacity, not feeling less than. I can't show up for my friend in this capacity because he needs this, and I don't have the capacity for that. It's not something I feel like I'm built to handle. And I used to feel so bad when I couldn't show up for my friends in ways that they needed. I just had to realize that wasn't my job. It wasn't my job to be that friend with that solution.
At that time.
Who knows what the future holds? Right? But it's one of the things that I'm learning as I navigate, and I know there's so many other 20-somethings that's gonna listen to this episode that is like, hey, I'm still learning how to navigate through certain relationships. I don't really know how to show up for this friend in that way, or I don't know how to tell people what it is that I need for them to show up for me in that way, and learning all of these gems. Sometimes you're not the person for the job. Sometimes they're not the person for the job.
And also learning how to show up for yourself.
100%.
I don't know if I knew. I don't know if I know I didn't know that in my 20s. I may have started to the time that after losing my mother died in 2016. What that did to me was the first time that I knew I had to show up for myself. It was the first time, because I had been married almost, 13, 14 years at that time. And I had a son that was 5 or 6 at the time. I had it down at that point in my life how to be a husband and how to be a father. And I can get the job done. I knew how to do that.
Yeah.
If you asked me how to be a husband, a dad, and how to make sure everything was taken care of financially, and from the end of being a son and a brother and an uncle, I had those things. They were impeccable. But once that happened and the tables turned, I couldn't go to other people to provide what I needed. It was the first time that I had to make myself a priority and not feel guilty that I had to take care of me before I was a husband, before I was a father, and literally structure my life that I was at the top of the food chain.
That makes so much sense.
And and that happened to me as a result of that situation. But it eventually became like my mantra, as far as something I started to tell my wife. Like when I start getting into trouble, and ways that I keep myself out of trouble is I pay attention that I make time for myself. Like I carve out my own personal time, my workout time. I played a lot of tennis, and I communicated to my wife when I realized that when I want to do certain things, this is what you cannot get in the way of, because it provides like nutritional value to me, so that I can be a better husband, so I can be a better father, so that I'm not walking around internally frustrated and you don't know.
Self-care.
Self-care. And that's my 20s have been lesson after lesson after lesson on just that. More so than anything.
I don't even know, and I'm gonna segue into this because he said something that I was thinking about, and I want to get back to that. I don't know if you should learn that in your 20s.
Really?
Now this is where we pivot in this podcast. I don't even know if you should try to be wise in your 20s.
Y'all, I'm telling you, this is why I need this episode. Please explain.
So what I say is, I say in your 20s you should gather all the information. You should gather all the knowledge. If you if you try to be too wise in your 20s, I'm not saying being reckless. So I'm not saying swinging the pendulum to each,
Correct.
to an extreme. If you try to be too wise in your 20s, you're gonna miss the great lessons that are gonna make you wise later. So the thing about what he had even mentioned is just going out there and kind of just going for it on the basketball court. But also in life, you gotta have a period where you just go for it.
Yeah.
Where you're not trying to get it right or wrong.
Yeah.
You're trying to just do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
And just like, you know, Nike says just do it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
But I feel your 20s is a time to just do it.
Yeah.
Because there's a season coming where you can't just do it. You cannot just do it. And that season, when that season comes, what you have this beautiful moment in your 20s, you can't redo that.
Yeah.
You can't go back. I can't do in my 40s what I did in my 20s.
No.
I can't.
No.
Right.
It would affect my whole life. It would have caused too much issues for me, for my family, and I have too many responsibilities.
Right.
But in my 20s, I did all of that. And the only reason why I think that I have any validity to even sit on here and talk about wisdom is not because of something that I've heard, but because of the experiences that I have had. And the experiences that I've had that I have sat in and have gone back and say, okay, this is what I've learned from that. And so my life is actually shown me, which this is something I've learned just in my 40s.
Yeah. Recently.
Just recently.
Yeah.
So we're talking about hitting new territory.
Right.
That I have just recently learned that my life is starting to almost bend this corner that is like the first 40 something years, and now is like I'm mirroring it like the sun and the moon.
Yeah.
And so some of those lessons are coming around, and I'm able to go back and say, it's not the same, but the same principle applies. So if you don't do that in your 20s, where you make all these different mistakes, go for it, you know, I'm not gonna say be reckless and not count the cost. You gotta count some cost.
Right.
But if you count too much, you miss the window where you're supposed to stack up all of these different life lessons so that they build for tomorrow.
And I think you're answering the last final question that I have for you guys. How do you navigate your how do you navigate the frustrations of your 20s? Just do it.
You're saying just do it, but it goes back to people's different people's personalities. What I say is, when you have to be careful when you talk about wisdom, because sometimes I think if you try to be wise too soon, it's just a facade or a word that we put on top of fear. So you're saying wisdom, but it's actually fear. So the thing about it is, if you want to do something and you sit down and write all of these are for the people who are
instructions.
Yes.
Yes. So what happens is, you'll talk yourself out of doing anything.
The instructions will tell you not to do it.
The instructions will tell you not to do it.
Yeah.
Because you can't jump. When you go to jump, there has to be no fear. Now, you can take your bullet points and use that information, but if you know too much, you're never going to do it.
You're never going to jump.
You're never going to do it.
Jump.
And that goes back to what you were saying about ignorance.
Yes.
It's just
like ignorant bliss.
being blissful in the ignorance.
Having that kid-like mindset and having that kid-like mentality is actually a beauty for that season. You will eventually grow out of that. Now, it will come with some pain, but you will eventually grow out of that. The
conundrum is when you flip-flop it. The conundrum is when you try to relive your second childhood, so to speak, you're already in your 40s and 50s and you're trying to take chances that you should have taken when you were 20 years old.
Exactly.
Or you're trying to be older when you're 20. You're trying to be older than when you're 20. You're trying to be a 45-year-old.
Guilty.
That was me too.
Yeah,
That was me.
you know, you're trying. Use an example of children, so to speak. You know, I had my first child at 37 years old. My mother had me when she was 20. I wish I had my child when I was 25 to kind of go through that experience when I'm supposed to. Now, don't get me wrong. We all love our children and we all appreciate our gifts from God. But at the same time, I understand now what it means to go through that parenthood at the age where you are able to do certain things. My son is 4. He must have run up and down the playground all day long. And I'm like, I don't really have everything you want for me to have right now. But if I was 25, 30 years old, it would have been a different experience. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate, you know, everything we do, but the wise person said don't have a child or too young. But you know, you're an adult, you can take care of it, you'll figure it out. God will help you figure out what that looks like at parenting. God will make you have a way financially, spiritually, emotionally, if that's what you really want to do. But sometimes we overthink it and we say, oh no, I gotta have the right amount of money, the right type of house. Don't worry about all that. Just make sure you found a person that you actually want to be with and raise a child together. So those type of things, like you said, you don't even really, you know, want to be wise at a young age, because a wise person will not let you fall in love, will not let you leave college and pursue your career the way you want to. A wise person won't take those chances, and you probably won't experience life the way you should to the fullest, you know.
And to be 100% transparent, that's my conundrum. That's my dilemma. Like, I've lived so much of my life trying to make the wisest decisions possible. And while it has been a guiding principle, it's also been a limiting principle sometimes, because it makes me not want to do certain things, which is why, and earlier on in the episode, I said I make certain decisions knowing better, but I don't always do better to escape the cage that I feel like sometimes I live in when I'm trying to make the wisest decision possible. And so
and you see that as a cage.
Yeah.
Although you're using the word wisdom or wise, which has a positive connotation to it.
Right.
But why is wisdom or why is it turning on you?
Because I'm not living my life. I'm not just living. I'm not enjoying the ignorance, the bliss that comes with ignorance. Sometimes I do. Most times, more times than often, I don't. And I've gotten to the point, I want to say, after I turned 25, to where I just decided to say, you know what, let me just enjoy. If I didn't enjoy the first 5 years of my 20s, I felt like I was just trying to just build the best way possible. Make no mistakes. Have no fun. It's all about get it in right now. No room for ignorance. I would say when I say no, have no fun. No room for ignorance.
Yes.
No room for bad decisions.
Yes.
Quote unquote. But now it's like, nah. Do what this time and this season of your life.
Give yourself some grace.
Give yourself some grace. Requires. One of my friends tell me all the time I take myself too serious, and I think she's right.
Yeah. You know, and you're right, because you've arrived to that season, but what's to come is a season where you have to turn that on.
Yeah, of course.
So the next season after that will be maximizing a particular season where you will have to do that.
Absolutely. And the thing that I'm grateful for, not to say that y'all don't get me wrong, I love wisdom now, calm down. But I will say that I have enough to, the same way that you can mirror on that back end of your 40s, I feel the same way about, okay, when the time does come, I know I can tap into wisdom and apply it to this situation. I know when it's time for me to, be super, super serious, I can do that. But let me learn how to be ignorant.
Yeah, it lets you learn how to be free
free, yeah.
Because with your personality, that's the part that you'll struggle with versus somebody else will struggle with the
It's
opposite.
the opposite. And it's all about learning yourself. And it's all about learning yourself, which is pretty much the theme of your 20s, learning yourself. And so that concludes our episode, guys. Listen, y'all have no idea how many gems I am walking away from this episode with. I'm super duper excited to just let you guys hear this. I pray that whatever you get from it, that it helps you navigate your 20s. And if you outside your 20s, I pray it helps you navigate your 30s or your 40s or wherever you find yourself. If you 10 years old, you picking up my podcast for the first time, because I have some nosy little students who like to listen to my podcast. If you're picking up this podcast for the first time, I hope it helps you navigate wherever you are. Whatever frustrations you find yourself with, I hope it helps. I am super duper excited for all things to come. Please stay tuned. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all of the above. It really does help get the message out there, guys. Make sure you go get my latest book, Walking with Wisdom. I am not the man I am today without one of these individuals, and I'm becoming an even better man by meeting one of these individuals. And so I really, really do hope that you guys pick up the book, get some gems. A lot of the things that I've learned from one of them is in this book. Just from watching him, it has nothing to do with things that he said as much as it does just seeing how he moves. And that is why we walk with wisdom. So until next time, I love you guys. Peace.